Welcome to the Analytics Power Hour. Analytics topics covered conversationally and sometimes with explicit language.
Hey everybody, welcome. It's the Analytics Power Hour, and this is episode 276. Business intelligence. It's sort of like an oxymoron, but BI tools, they come and they go, and somehow we're still rebuilding the dashboards for the third time in 3 years. Well, there you go, Mo. Fixed it for you.
Thanks.
Besides providing analytics engineers somewhat Sisyphean job security, I don't know why anyone, I don't know if I know anyone who's actually truly happy with their BI tool. Are we expecting too much? Are we trying too hard to make them fit every possible use case? And it leads to a graveyard of unused and obsolete reports from the last time someone got hired in as the head of data and tried to build what the org was asking for? I don't know. Maybe newer concepts like semantic layers or AI are going to usher us into a golden age of self-serve data brilliance. Speaking of data brilliance, let me introduce you to my co-hosts. Mo Kiss, how you going?
I am going great and super pumped to talk about this topic.
I know, and I'm excited to ask you how you're going finally, because I keep wanting to with the other co-hosts, and it doesn't really fit. So
it doesn't work, no.
And Tim Wilson, glad to have you.
I've shown remarkable restraint already up to this point.
Yeah, I am glad you're here, Tim. I know you probably don't have any strong opinions about this topic, but glad you're here. And I'm Michael Helbling. We also wanted to get on a guest, someone with deep experience navigating these challenges. Colin Zima is the CEO of Omni, a modern business intelligence platform. Prior to that, he was the chief analytics officer at Looker and helped lead that product through its acquisition by Google. And today he is our guest. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Thank you for having me.
Colin, why do we struggle so much with BI tools? Maybe close it down a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it actually comes down to like a very simple idea, which is everyone at some level can do things with data. Some people are just calculating the change on like paying for money at the store, and some people are doing like hardcore data science and machine learning. But at some level, data is something that everyone is doing. Like everyone takes math. And the challenge with building a business intelligence tool itself is that you actually need to build a product that is used by that entire spectrum of users. So you have a CEO that is expecting perfect visual reporting and clear data and just stuff that looks and feels amazing. You have a data science team that probably hates the tool that you bought and wants to run something in a notebook on their desktop.
Yep.
You've got like a marketing team that just like doesn't even want to use your tool, but is just trying to get their thing done. And then you've got like your finance team that's just like, why isn't this Excel?
Where's the like download to CSV button? Yep.
Exactly. That doesn't want your tool either in a different way. And I was sort of mentioning this to Mo a couple weeks ago, but one of these things that you see is like with most business software. So if you take like Slack or email, for example, everyone uses it the exact same way. Like you open your emails, you send emails. It doesn't really do anything else. Like there's no automation on top of it. With a BI tool, you have a variety of users that has completely different desires in the platform. So some people are frustrated if they can't get SQL. Some people are frustrated if they do see SQL. And I can't even enumerate the number of times where I've gotten requests on the same day for two opposite opinions that are both antithetical to each other. It's like, why is this the default? No, like, why isn't the inverse the default? And I think this is actually the core challenge in building BI is like, how do you make a tool that is perfect for everyone at all of these different levels? And we're working on it, but like, I think that's actually the core problem.
But the premise of BI is often that of a BI tool is that you just have to, I like the framing of the different users, and it's like the data team or the BI team says, we just need to get everybody to their starting point based on who they are. The marketers, we just need to give them just the right dashboard, and then they'll have interactivity and flexibility. And we need to it literally never works. And it just instead winds up being, it's the next day and there's one thing this doesn't do for me. And now what do I do? And then it seems like it forks into, it's the person who's hacked, who's a hacker who goes in and figures it out. But then it's the other overwhelming majority who say, well, now I got to go back to the team that was trying to offload the work from their plate and ask them to do more for me.
Is it about the tool, or is it our expectations often of like, I don't know, like the dashboarding?
It's definitely not about the tool, but I'm just going to say that. I'll put that on.
I can give you actually an example where I do think the tool doesn't help it. And like, this is one of like the most visceral ones for me, which is like, if you build a BI tool, it usually is writing SQL. So SQL is sort of like a core language of the tool. Like the whole back end of the tool is writing SQL at some level. And then you need to build these front end layers on top of it, like something that's called table calculations or some sort of post-processing language. And inevitably, the users that you're exposing that language to are not SQL people. They're Excel people. But if you look at every single tool's implementation of that final language, it's always this weird hybrid between Excel and SQL, because you're trying to bring a back end that does one thing and deliver a front end that does another thing. And it's one of those examples where if you try to thread the needle and create this half language, it's like you're back to the XKCD like 15th standard of like a new language. And I do think this is one of those tools where everyone kind of thinks they can do it better and they try to reinvent. And again, like I'm mildly talking my book because like we made our front end Excel and our back end SQL. But I do think that sometimes there's a learning curve associated because the builder is trying to solve a problem, and in solving the problem, they create new things. And then there's a learning curve for the user that they need to come along with that makes it hard. And that's why like Excel as this lowest common denominator is always sort of the release valve for every single tool in existence. Is like, I don't know how to do this, but I can make it make tables, and then I can go put it in this other app that I actually know how to use. And I do think that at some level, that is a failing of the tool stack, because the user is saying like, hey, I can't quite understand this, but I know I can understand it over here. I do think that underlying all of this is like, you know, business is hard and they change, and it's hard to make like perfect metrics. Like the reason that marketer's dashboard doesn't work is because it probably worked and then they changed the definition of a thing.
Oh yeah.
And now
they did.
Now we've got two time series that need to attach to each other, and like that's just hard.
But even like going from, I mean, Excel, like one, I think fair dividing line is Excel people who are comfortable and regularly use pivot tables and people who don't. And the concept of like metrics and dimensions and aggregation and group by like getting somebody from, if they get pivot tables, which has a deeper level of I get the manipulation of data, and I'm like, oh, well, you actually kind of get some intuition around a group by in SQL. You get the idea of a dimension with dropping a metric on it. I mean, there's a ton of people who don't get that, and yet they're jumping into a BI platform. And I don't know that it's a tooling. I think you kind of nailed it. Like the promise of the BI tools is we're going to be everything to everybody. And that just winds up being feature bloat, and you're imperfect for everyone. And no one's really even defined what the focus becomes on. If I get the right thing in the tool and I'm just going to obsess about that, and it misses the step, I guess, Mo, this is to my answer to the emphatic, no, it's not about the tool. They're not actually going in with clarity on what they're trying to do.
Sorry, the person using the tool you mean doesn't have clarity on what they're trying to do. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
They're saying, I'm supposed to be like, I kind of want to know how that campaign did. Well, what does that really mean? Well, I mean, I guess like how many registrations did we get? Okay, where can I go get the number of registrations? There's already, that's kind of broken because they're kind of setting off for sort of aimless wandering in the data with the hope that some useful insight will emerge. And where they hit the most tangible blocker is they have some sort of frustration or limitation with the tool. And those could be a million different frustrations. And then they start to say, well, I'm not, my problem is that the tool is not giving me this. And I think, in my experience, the problem is often, no, you're just kind of trying to wander through the data and find something.
They're trying to do exploratory analysis, right? And
no, not well. But they take issue with your.
Well, fine, whatever you want to call it. They're trying to wander through the data, but potentially don't have the skill set to do that in a structured way that they don't end up meandering. And so then the question is like, instead of trying to teach people to use a BI tool, do we actually need to teach people how to do analysis, how to answer, Tim, a business question?
Well, how to validate that it's a good business question in the first place, right? I mean, because even that, not to a pedantic, like, well, if somebody in the business asks a question, isn't that a business question? Definitionally, yes. Is it useful? Many, many times, no. Yeah.
I underestimated your level of soapboxness on this topic. But we
How
are here.
could you possibly have underestimated that?
I just thought you would restrain a little bit, but here we are.
I do think there's there's another layer of this that I've experienced in the past. So like I've managed data teams and been sort of like disconnected enough that I've asked for things from the data team. And I actually think one of the other challenges, and this isn't a product problem either, it's a people problem, is the language of data people and how data people think is actually quite different from how business people think.
Yes.
And the translation can actually be very challenging. I'll give you an example. We did this at Looker where I had left the data team at this point and was sort of doing product stuff, and we were doing a giant repricing. And I went to the data team and I said, like, hey, would love to do some analysis. We're going to do some repricing. And we cut the data a bunch of different ways, but they essentially came back with a dashboard that had 30 tiles on it. And my first question was like, great, this all looks good. What should we do with pricing? Like, you did all this analysis. What should we do? And their answer was like, I don't know. We cut the data a bunch of different ways. Like, what do you think? And I was like, guys, like, the point of this was not to make the charts. The point of this was to get the conclusion. And the charts were for you, and I guess for me, to help get to the conclusion. But really, if you had just shown up and been like, these are the pricing tiers, that would have also been equally good. And I think this, like, because the BI tool is the vehicle for communication between these two teams being everyone and the data team, you get these sort of lost in translation conversations where like the data team might be concerned with sort of like pedantically correct, well-structured semantic layers and models. And the business is just like, hey, I'm just trying to go spend some money right now on marketing. Like, where should I go put it?
Yes.
And I think that is actually one of the big problems as well.
But I think you also, that's a great point that, I mean, everyone's well-intentioned. Everyone has good intentions and is very capable. But if you have the business saying, I'm trying to speak the data team's language, they wind up speaking in that language and saying, like, I think we need to kind of slice it a bunch of different ways to see if we can figure out what this is. And what the data team hears is, oh, the ask is to slice it a bunch of different ways. And then the business will be able to look at it and the answer will emerge and
materialize.
Yeah. And you wind up with both saying, well, that's what you asked for. I mean, the line I like to use is like, you have all these dashboards and the business at the end of just destroys the data team when they say, I know you're doing everything I've asked and it's a lot of stuff. And I basically understand what this is, but what am I supposed to actually do with it? And it's like, it's a dagger to the heart of the data team that then gets frustrated saying, what the hell? You just said I did everything.
Tim, that happens at mature companies. I think what happens is you do all the things and then they go, oh, can you just have this filter? Or I just need to have this view. Or like, oh, what if we just tweak it this way? And what they're actually saying is this dashboard is not answering my question. Like I can't, and they just keep adding to it. And then you end up with this hot mess.
Hey, you're listening to the Analytics Power Hour, so you know that data is everywhere and it is growing fast. In fact, we just generated some data together since you're listening right now. You know, you put all the world's data together and we generated 149 zettabytes last year. And next year it will be 181 zettabytes. I mean, that is a lot of data. Thankfully, you don't have to manage it all, but you do have to manage yours. And that's why there's Fivetran. It's your one-stop platform for all your data sources with over 700 managed data connectors. Fivetran seamlessly centralizes your ever-growing data streams. And now it's even easier with the new Connector SDK. Data engineers can use simple Python scripts to build custom connectors into any data source. That's worth saying again. Any data source. So forget the data chaos. Centralize effortlessly with Fivetran. All of your sources, one solution. Simplify your data life. You can go start a 14-day free trial today at fivetran.com/APH. That's fivetran.com/APH. All right, let's get back to the show.
Colin, I need to just revisit, Tim.
Go ahead.
The topic you were just kind of on about that specific example with the pricing. I'm really curious because, full disclosure, we are doing a lot of thinking internally about BI tooling and semantic layers and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
It seems to be the topic of the moment. Because we've had a BI tool for 3 to 5 years. So obviously that's the thing that we're looking at the moment.
That's what you're blaming at the moment. That's what's being blamed at the moment for,
That was sarcasm, Tim. One of the observations I've had, so there's no secret in this, but we have been a big user of Mode for a very, very long time.
Yep.
And I pointed out to someone the other day, I was like, one of the challenges that I feel that we have is it is used as an exploratory tool by data scientists a lot. And it is very good at you can make hacky stuff. You can quickly get to an answer, do what you need to do, write SQL, awesome. But then there are other people in the business that have really been trying to use it as a dashboarding tool that is stakeholder facing and does all the things, in my view, not super well, because it's really ugly and I like beautiful things. And then ultimately you end up with this tool that is data scientists trying to build hacky exploratory shit. And then you have trying to have business stakeholders use it to go to look at dashboards for specific things. And you end up with this massive amount of bloat because no one can find anything. It just becomes unruly. Are we getting to a point where we need to think about this from a more mature point of lots of businesses now have multiple BI tools for different purposes? Is that just the evolution that if you get to a big enough stage that that's kind of what you have to do? Or is it, again, back to that we're trying to use it for too many things?
I mean, I'd like to think that someone could solve this. I think the reality is when you start building different tools, I actually, not to answer your question directly, but I'll give you a direct analogy, which is Looker had semantic layers.
I feel the burn of it.
You're aware of them. DBT didn't exist when Looker started. And at some level, you're always trying to sort of turn this knob between self-service and control. What you're talking about is this knob between self-service and control. It's either people can do stuff and they make a mess and they're wrong, or they can't and they get frustrated. And I'd like to think that at Looker, we democratized a lot of sort of getting at data because we had the semantic layer and people could do things on top of it. But in some ways, a lot of people thought that Looker's semantic layer was even too open and too many people were touching it.
I can see
and
that.
For a lot of early customers, DBT was an interesting option just because they might have only had 4 people that had access to the DBT layer. And thus, there was a new gate and a different level of control and a sort of a different version of self-service where, Looker was even abstracted away from the transformation in the warehouse. And I think the Mode Looker balance that you have is very similar to the Excel Tableau balance or pick any pair of tools. There are progressive layers of freedom that you get the more disconnected you are from the core business system. And in some ways, it's nice to have a disconnected tool because you can just point at it and say, over there, we don't trust anything, but you can do whatever you want. But over here, we have control. The downside of that philosophy is I'm coming up with terrible analogies as I talk, but it's if you had a crime-free zone and a no crime zone, I can't remember the Purge. If you go crazy on the Purge day, then you've made a mess in one day, but the other days are clean. And all you're kind of trying to do is side pocket and figure out how much of a side pocket you want. So maybe the Purge is a good structure for your data org, chaos and then order. Or maybe you should try to create order every single day and create more balance. That was a bad analogy. I was testing that one.
I was going to say, we often talk about the path of there's a structured path to go down that has been built. If you want to go off road, it's fine. But then
yep.
you're responsible for your 4-wheel drive and your own safety.
Exactly.
But so one of the things I'm really curious to hear your view on is, so we also are users of Looker. We have built LookML, and this is my personal observation. I'm sure there are people that potentially don't agree. I feel what we've done with our LookML, and this gets us very much into that hot topic at the moment of semantic layers, because it seems to be all anyone's discussing. I feel that our LookML essentially replicated what we had in our data warehouse of basically like report tables, right? Like super lean, but very structured. And what it meant is like we have 70,000 tables in Snowflake in our data warehouse, and we duplicated that in Looker, where like you don't have a view for users, you have a view for users by country, you have a view of users by platform, you have a view of users by marketing channel, by users by, and you end up with this, what seems to a data person as a very beautiful, like LookML layer, but to a user, they're like, sorry, there's 50 tables. It's like 50 looks at say user. Which table do I use? I sometimes feel like it's not even like it's the data team wanting to structure it to be perfect from their view of like, this is the perfect architecture, but then it creates this usability problem. I'm so curious to hear your views on that.
I think this is why we bounce between these centralized and decentralized platforms. So like a lot of my thesis is essentially like people appreciate business objects and like very centralized data teams. And so they were like perfect semantic layer, data team controls everything, like great. Quality very high, agility very low, like, and then someone gets their hands on Tableau desktop, starts building things, and everyone's like, oh, wow, that side of the world looks really good. Like, ditch the business objects. Everyone runs over there. That builds for 5 years, maybe 3 years. And you've got all this reporting. And then you're like, wait a second. Like, we just did a meeting where 8 people brought 8 different metrics. Like, this is like, oh, wait, look at Looker over there. Like, that looks pretty good. Like, let's go run over to that side of the house. And I think you end up with this oscillation back and forth. And like maybe you settle with a little bit on both sides. I'd like to think that the ideal version of this is you're doing it in a bunch of different layers and you're sort of differentiating between what happens in what layers. So the example I always give, and this is a pretty trivial example, is like Fivetran sucks data out of Salesforce. For whatever reason, Salesforce delivers deleted records. No one ever needs that. Like clean that up in the warehouse. Make sure that no one can ever touch a deleted record. Like I've built a bunch of reporting on deleted records. It's very frustrating. In the inverse, if you're building like a daily, weekly, monthly table and telling your user to go navigate the BI tool to go figure out like daily active users, and they've got to go like exploring for 14 different cuts of users, I think then you've probably abstracted too much into the warehouse and you've not left enough in the BI tool. It's really hard to actually strike a proper balance, which is why everyone now is like, hey, maybe AI fixes this. And like, I can just throw a text box on top of everything. And like magic beans, like everyone can get the reporting they need.
Because somehow the LLM will know which of those user tables is the right one to use.
Exactly. It
does feel like, that's everyone says the requirements are very simple for my BI tool. I just want a tool that's intuitive, easy to use, gives me access to all the data, and I won't get in trouble with it. And that is the behavior that people act under. I will call out that we had Ben Stansel on episode 190 to talk about metrics layers. Remember when those were kind of a hot, and I think he's gone beyond it. I still am firmly in the camp of when people show up with those different reports, different numbers, different revenue numbers. Sometimes it's not particularly material. Sometimes it's not even a metric that fucking matters. But we have conditioned people to say, we have found a discrepancy, and everybody feels actually good about going to track down why these metrics are different. And another way to like solve for that is to look at a lot fewer metrics when you're sitting in a meeting. So I think that, back to like, is it about the tool? I get that there is a tooling desire, and I love the way you're articulating kind of the range of, it's a balance, and there's never going to be a perfect balance. And so how do you handle it? But to me, it feels like it's kind of going to be an impossible fix as long as businesses jump to the data. Everybody wants to come. We're supposed to be data driven. So let me bring my 75 charts. If everybody brings their 75 charts, we're going to find charts that disagree, and we're going to have an argument about which chart. And then somebody's going to say, we got to figure this out. So then it goes back to the data team who they're both right. But now the data team is putting together an explanation of reconciling these two different revenue counts.
Yes.
And that's the next meeting. And nobody's saying, what the hell are we doing? Like, this doesn't matter, but everybody's felt good. They've had activity and they've discovered things. But okay, sorry. It's going to happen every 7 minutes, Mo. There's just going to be like a little pressure valve and then I'll go quiet again. Will that work?
No, I'm here for it.
Okay.
The what I was going to say is like I can't remember. I think I think this might have been like a pop science book that I read that effectively the thesis of the book was like happiness in life is about exceeding expectations for everything. It's I might have gotten the wrong message out of it, but that is what I personally took away is like always have lower expectations and exceed them. And I actually think this is the problem with data tools is if your expectation is like I'm going to do some product analytics and they'll mostly be right and we'll make a better decision. You'll exceed expectations. If your expectation is like, we've got a little bit of a mess over here and we've got some slower metrics over here, but like you'll mostly get what you want. If the expectation inversely is I can answer every single question I have in like 8 words with no context whatsoever, then you have a very mismatched expectation for how messy data is in reality. And so like, I think the funny thing when you think about people that really are happy with their data tools, I think sometimes it's the most technical people that are businessy. And the reason is because they can find the balance between these things. Like, I don't know Ben that well, but I bet if we had a conversation about managing product with data, both of us would be like, a little data input is good, but mostly just like make good decisions and pick stuff.
Yeah, but he'd have like a long footnote and links to some obscure movie and a clip. But
he would say it much more eloquently. But like, I do think a lot of it is just being able to communicate what you are doing and have people understand it well. Like if people, I remember this at the tail end of Looker, for example, like you start getting bigger and everyone's like, let's make metrics-based product decisions. So the canonical example is like, if we move these pixels around, do people click more stuff on my e-commerce site? It's great if you're Amazon because like moving things by a couple pixels like increases, click through by 50%. It's like for Looker, it's not going to tell us whether we should go build like trellis charting or go work on like the SQL interface. It's just like be an adult and make a decision and choose between the two of them and then like monitor and make sure that it's doing what you want it to do or that, like people aren't getting stuck in some weird way. But like data is not going to do your job for you. And I feel like a lot of people are expecting a data person to come in and be like, go make me some money for the business. Like I gave you the database, like where's the money now? And it's not usually that simple.
Okay. So just hypothetically, Colin, I feel like I could talk to you for like 5,000 years about all of the problems that I'm trying to deal with. So I love this point of expectations and you want everything to exceed. If things exceed your expectations, then that's great. With BI tools, like fundamentally, I do think the issue is that what is sold to the business is also, we're going to migrate from tool X to tool Y. We're going to do POCs. People spend way too long gathering requirements, doing all the things, and then it's sold as like, this is the perfect solution, which disappoints everybody because it doesn't do any of the things completely perfectly.
Yep.
It sounds like the win is to message it differently of like, we have this tool, it's going to be able to do 90% of what we need. And then when for some people it does 95%, everyone's going to be like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, is it actually, we just need to get better at how we message this?
I'd like to think the answer is sort of yes. Like, I think I'll give you an example, which is like, if we go turn an AI on our company and we're like, this thing's going to make us 100 times as much money next year, like your CEO is going to be pretty disappointed. If you make one and you're like, I think this will search docs a little bit better. And then you come back and you're like, wow, this thing can kind of answer all of our support questions. That's pretty good. I think like then you've won a little bit. Now, you're probably not going to be able to go to your boss or your boss's boss's boss or whatever and be like, I'm going to rip out my BI tool and monopolize the data team for 6 months. And we're going to get an okay product. Like it needs to go solve some problem. But I think the thing that we would do in Looker POCs, for example, is we would always try to solve a really tangible problem. Like if marketing was the problem, let's go make marketing a little bit more efficient in the POC. And like, of course, you can get sidetracked and get into like the 100 thing checklist, but ultimately you're just actually solving a marketing problem. And frankly, you might not have even needed to use Looker. Like, you might have just gotten a sales engineer and whatever tool that they wanted and been able to do it.
The incentive structure, I mean, I think this is the challenge. I think I agree. Changing the messaging would be the solution. The challenge is that the BI platforms and their sales teams, like and marketing for the BI tools writ large and analytics platforms, they kind of have to have a pithy declarative statement that is the kind of extreme. And then I would claim that even when you go to the POC, when you do the demos are always simplistic, kind of, you look at the example of how this works on this one page. It's the lowest hanging fruit. What happens, I will claim, is people see that and say, that's awesome. That's not my exact use case, but mine's like adjacent to it. And I'm sure it will do the same thing for me. And the same thing happens when picking a POC. It's like the most solvable thing happens. And I'm not opposed to POCs. Like, there's a lot of value coming out of them. But the next level of managed expectations is saying, we picked a tight and defined POC that had a high likelihood of success and would let us kick the tires a little bit. Now everyone's going to assume that that's going to happen in an instant for all of us. And neither the BI platforms nor the consultants who are being brought on to help implement have any incentive whatsoever to disabuse them of that notion, because they're getting paid when the licensing gets signed or when it gets implemented. They're not getting paid a year from now when, value has really been delivered. Like, I think it is a massive, it's just a structural challenge. I think the more people who are trying to manage those expectations, it does fall, I think, to the internal person that says, take everything that's being said with a grain of salt. It's shocking how little skepticism seasoned, experienced people have. When the vendor tells them X, they just accept it. When the vendor doesn't know the internal complexities. Really? Absolutely.
More than you think.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I feel like I'm a bit of an asshole. I'm like, this could go wrong.
You're a snowflake. But the thing is you look at their incentives for many, many people. People have been beating up on the tool. So it's either our tool or it's my team and the process we run. What's the easier psychological thing? Yeah, I will pile on the tool now. And guess what? If I buy a new tool, and Colin, you said it, that buys us 6 months or 12 months of time where we get to tell people, I know Business Objects sucked, but we're rolling out Tableau,
But see, I think the opposite. I feel like,
well, you're wrong.
6 to 12
that is
months
1,000% what happens.
I know that is what happens, but that whole, I fundamentally find it so weird how people are like, we're going to do this migration. It's 6 to 12 months. I am like, I get mortified when I need to tell the business that of like, we're going to spend 12 months migrating something. Like, that's unacceptable. Like, I find it weird that people would want to use that to pad. I'm like, that means we're not moving fast enough. We're not delivering value.
But once they get over that hurdle, they're in this glorious window.
The overarching point is we take a process problem and we try to slap a tool on top of it, as opposed to reevaluating the process and its lack of functionality within our organization. And that's kind of, I think, Tim, what point you're making. Whether it's 3 months to replace it, whether it's 12 months, it doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to mute Tim and Mo for just a second, Colin. It's just you and me. No, I'm just kidding. But I do want to just switch gears just a little bit, because we've talked a lot about a lot of the sort of like the challenges in our industry around BI, but there's lots of things happening right now in our space, specifically AI. And, one of the things we all want to do as good analytics people is sort of think where we're headed with this stuff. And so maybe you can start to share some of your perspective on, okay, there's a lot of talk and hype around AI, but when the rubber hits the road, what's real and what's the hype cycle?
I think it's actually sort of this conversation even magnified. I remember when I joined Hotel Tonight, there was almost this expectation that was like, hey, you're a data scientist. We don't have one of those. Like, go make us some money. And I feel like
find us the insights.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, isn't that what data science is? It's like you take data and you make, and I feel like AI is actually that more magnified. It's like people are sort of like, why can't I just hook this up to my database and have it optimize my business? I'm pretty far along the side of like, I think that that's what humans are for, is like interpretation. And, like if you have a true optimization problem, it's because you've cleaned the data so well that you've created like essentially an optimization problem, not actually a business problem. I think at the same time, it is remarkable the things that can happen with so little human input that AI can do. Like the examples I always cite are like, you can go hand it your database and it'll go write you like a query with 8 CTs and go spit out some sort of cohort analysis, like something that would have taken a user hours to do. And it can be right. I think the flip side is that the control of what AI is doing, I think, is actually really important. And the way the human fits in the loop, I think, is really, really important. The examples I like to give for stuff like this are, I think that if you look at the AI use cases that are most well adopted now, it's writing and it's coding. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because they are so heavily human in the loop. Like if it writes a block of text, you don't just press enter and like get a picture of a block of text. You can touch it, you can feel it, like you can manipulate words. Similarly with code, it's not like go build this app for me, though there's obviously stuff that is trying to do things like that. It's much more like I took a cut at this. You can pull in the things that are valuable and throw out the things that aren't. When I see it applied to data, I think that there's a pretty hard fork of AI that will write SQL. So truly like black box, the stuff that Anthropic and OpenAI are spending a lot of time working on. Like I've heard they have a couple hundred engineers that are working on text to SQL, or sending it through a semantic layer. And again, this comes back to like governed analytics, the classic sort of BI concepts. I think that people will have to make a decision. Implicit is obviously like, I think semantic layers are really, really important because I think if you cannot maintain control and sort of tie it back to UI, it's going to be impossible for users. I think there's still going to be a place for text to SQL. Like if I do need to go write 200 lines of SQL, it can be really valuable. But I think that the control level in manipulating SQL is just not high enough to address all of the users that we're talking about. And so I think for it to apply well in data, it's going to need to attach to UI. So what I mean by that is you're going to need to send it through some sort of semantics or some sort of intermediate layer that can let a user touch and feel the results, touch the filters, understand the subqueries, understand what the aggregations mean. And what I would say is, I think when I do see it applied in those types of contexts, it's actually unbelievable how good it is. Like we turn this on our own Salesforce data, and I routinely now, instead of building a dashboard that is like an opportunity lookup, I say, give me some information about opportunity XYZ. And it just picks out 8 random fields or whatever, but it finds me like who the sales rep is, who the sales engineer is, like whether there's 3 opportunities, and it does it in 4 words. And that kind of stuff, while it feels like a very low bar, like no one would call an opportunity record lookup data analytics, I actually think those are the areas where end users are struggling the most very frequently. Like, show me the Zendesk tickets for customer XYZ. Yeah. That's not data analytics.
It's data retrieval, basically.
It is. But like that is actually, I would argue, the most impactful version of data analysis, which I know is like the least sexy thing that anyone would ever say. But like looking up stuff is kind of hard. And it's all sitting in the warehouse and it's all attached together. And you need to be able to link it all up. And I think AI is actually unbelievable for those types of problems because it can get things mostly right. And then the human can say like, oh, actually, I want these 2 fields, or I want to tweak the filter, or I want to change the sort. And so I'm pretty excited about those things. I think the sort of next layer is, can it ask the next question or sort of point you at follow-ups? And I think it sort of can. There's just always the danger that it does the trivial. And like, I see this a lot. It's like, oh, I can cut this by time. I can cut this by region.
It can cut it so many ways that it's going to find anomalies. Just like mathematically, I can slice, if you had to slice it every time and look for something, that would slow you down. And if you found something, you would have had It would have had your logic behind it. If you just let the machine slice it 1,000 ways, it's going to pop up like 20 things. And that's just statistics. Like that's, yeah.
We have 300 customers now. Like, I don't need it doing statistical analysis on our opportunities. Like, they're coming from just like the growth of our business, and like the signal means nothing.
You have such a wonderful perspective of this. I'm curious to understand how you're balancing it though, because I've been looking at lots of BI tools, and it feels like everyone is trying from a product perspective to sell the dream of just natural language questions with an interface. Anyone can ask anything. And like, how are you balancing that? Because that's what is being sold to execs, that we're going to be able to do this in months.
I mean, we do a little bit of it too, don't worry. But like, I think that I'm trying to encourage people to climb the slope more gently, which is not always the most appealing statement. But like, again, going back to the Salesforce or lookup example, like I truly think that lookups are the most killer use case for natural language right now, like immediately.
But is that genuinely what people are struggling to do without a simple, where is this data? It feels like the most solvable with traditional BI.
I think more than you think, actually. Like,
I see it a lot because a business user doesn't know how to address the underlying data in a way that'll get that for them. So like being able to just ask it and the AI kind of know like, okay, this table, this table, this table, it's sort of like a little bit of a analytics engineer in a box. So instead of prioritizing in a queue where I now need to wait a month until they can get to my report, if they ever get to it, I can just have it right now.
Yeah. And the other example that I think that people, and again, this is going to sound trivial, but the idea of like reverse value lookup, like I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a tool where someone's like, I need to filter for customers in the US. Like that's not a complex query, but to find US, you need to know whether that's region or country or geo. And I know that sounds incredibly trivial, and like every tool should be able to do that.
No, I hear you. I deeply hear you. And did they write US or United States? Like,
or USA or yeah.
Yeah. And I think those are like, again, in terms of expectations, like I know that's solvable. And I think I see our sales reps literally using the product more because they can do stuff like this. I think the follow on is like, if it gets really good at this thing, like you unlock the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I think it's less of like a regime change stepwise, like everyone's great at data now. I think it's that people get a little bit more comfortable, like in the same way that instead of doing a lookup on Yahoo message boards, now you went to Google and you typed in search, and like, ThoughtSpot's had this message for 15 years. But I think in many ways, like that has become trivial for every BI tool to implement and will now become much more native in all products that we are using.
This is kind of going back a little bit, but I would love to have you just riff a little bit. It's Microsoft, so we can say good or bad things are huge. They'll be fine. We're going to have no influence. But as you were like the Excel to Power Pivot to Power Query to Power BI, DAX or no DAX in, I know this is kind of it's still bugging me from when you were saying it. Like, is it fair to say that was Microsoft's attempt to address that balancing act, that you're basically, there's like a Peter principle for the business user, that they're going to progress, if they got to go to actually Excel to a pivot table to then Power Pivot to Power Query. That's a complicated, and you hit the limitations in Power BI of which desktop versus window, who has what access, what data can I pull into. So you wind up with all the other challenges we've been talking about. But was that kind of a viable and intentional approach by them?
I think it exactly, like they are the only company I cite that is sort of trying to do what at least I say that we're trying to do. Like, I think they have tried to layer everything into one place. Like, and you can layer in PowerPoint and like presentations on top of that as well. Like, I think that because they have such a wide customer base and they're very good at producing product, they've realized that the semantic layer is different than the spreadsheet, is different than the halfway point in between them. And the products evolved probably a little bit more naturally. So the way that they link together is maybe not as elegant as it would be if it was like centrally planned. But I think the reason that all of those exist is because of these gradients. Like DAX is really just a natural evolution of Excel attached to SQL. It's their intermediate language halfway between SQL and Excel. But like it does a thing that neither of them do. And so like, yes, I think it's actually the best done version out there by a single player.
If they had just stopped at Excel 2003 and then started building, instead of getting all the bloat in Excel, trying to make Excel do, I mean, actually that's interesting. Excel tried to do too much. Now all that legacy overhead's still there before they built up the other. Okay. Oh, okay. That's helpful.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually going to be my next question, was just on that topic, is like, there does seem to be more like strong, newer players kind of in this space at the moment. And part of me is wondering, like,
there are also garbage charlatans who are AI hype monkeys.
Totally. But that's always the case, okay. Right? For some. It does seem like there is like this, not race, but like maybe a bit of a pushback from us. And I mean, I work in tech, so you know, we have a very different perspective on tooling and what we're willing to try, or like appetite to try new things, maybe than some more traditional businesses. But there does seem to be this thing of like some of the more legacy BI tooling, like a bit of pushback. And I just wonder, like, I feel like so many companies have tried some of those tools and it hasn't worked. We need to go to something that's a bit more new and innovative and thinking about this problem with a different perspective. And like, I'm curious to see what you're seeing. Like, is that a fair observation, or is it like, no, this is just the standard run of the mill and people are still choosing the legacy tools?
Yeah, I think there's two things at play. So one is, I can't tell you how many people I talk to that are still using MicroStrategy, now Strategy, and business objects.
They're just in it for the crypto.
Yeah. Well, maybe they like Michael Saylor and his business strategies. But like, I would argue that a lot of those are there purely because they literally just do what they need to do. Like, to your point, they could go transition off of them. And I think that over the infinity of time, they will all be deprecated. But like, maybe they do need to produce 12 spreadsheets a day and send them to, you know, S3 and let the team pick them up. And like, they are happy with that workflow and it exists. And I think the challenge is like, a lot of modern tools didn't pick up the functionalities that business objects and MicroStrategy have. So like, a lot of the hardcore legacy modeled BI tools, I think actually still don't have like 2025 comps that can replace them, ourselves included. Like, we have work to do some of those things. So I think that's one piece of it. I would say the mediating factor on the other side is, I'm also talking to a lot of like CIOs of big companies now that are looking to buy any AI tool under the sun to POC it because they've got to go buy some AI.
Because they have a mandate.
It's exactly like, it's a weird dichotomy of like, I've got MicroStrategy producing PDFs over here. Like, we talked to one customer that was like, I need to spit out 200 pages of PDFs of all the products that we sold yesterday, every day. Like, I need your tool to do that. And we were like, well, we don't do that yet, but we will do it. But it's like, they have business objects doing that. And they decided they need it. But at the same time, they're like, also, we want to replace our whole front end with natural language. And so like, you have this weird tension between like the dream and the reality that people are trying to navigate. And I think that's what's making it a kind of strange time, because you do have the YC, you know, like 2-person companies doing text to SQL that are able to go talk to, you know, Fortune 500 companies. And then you've also got, you know, a 22-year-old business objects deployment.
Mo made the comment a while back. I'm going to do another callback to mode and maybe the not the most attractive visuals. So broadening it, I'm not into beautiful. I'm into effective. But it's not about making the data pretty. But
beautiful can be effective. Pretty means being understood.
I have modules and classes I've taught on that front, but Excel, I mean, that's another reason I think people have stayed with Excel is Excel still seems to have more flexibility on the charts. And every BI tool I've worked with, like, I can't shift get another couple of pixels between the grid and the whatever and the label on it. I'm deep down the R ggplot world. Love that. Wish every tool was working in that, but that would be stupid because nobody would understand it because it's a nightmare to learn. So I put myself in the camp of the like super precious about the specifics of the visualization, the palette, the color, the font size, all the stuff to follow Stephen Few's and Edward Tufte's best practices. BI tools, I understand it because they're trying to serve all these masters and they have to plug in the limitations. Like, how much is the front end visualization impossible? It has to be good enough. We're going to differentiate ourselves. For a long time, Tableau, that was the way they were differentiating themselves.
Still, literally still.
So, like, where do you fall on that? On the importance of saying, when I do a chart, I need to be able to pick it and control it. And if I want a bar with one series and a line with the other series, and this on the right side, where does that fall?
I'd say I'm closer to the Mo side of the house on this one. When it comes down to it, again, you have many masters here. The example I always give is if you look at the chart of sort of dashboard consumption in an organization, it is just absurdly skewed. Like, the top 3 dashboards are 80% of the usage in the entire environment. If that's the case, you should spend time on those 3 dashboards, making sure that they look and feel amazing. Inversely, for the other 2,000 dashboards that exist, have an average of 2 views apiece, you need to optimize for how fast it is to build them, how flexible they are, like how well they attach to different shapes of data. And this, again, gets back to this really difficult challenge of, like, it needs to be both the fastest to build in the whole world, but it also needs to have the most extensibility. So, like, a thing that we did is you can build it in the UI, but you can also unlock the Vega spec and, like, literally write Vega code. And it, like, if I said that to a business user, they just glaze over. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. But the point is, it's not for that person. It's for, like, the one dashboard where you do need to move the title 15 pixels to the left, being able to go do that. And again, like, it's so hard to do both. And the reason Excel can do so much is, like, frankly, they've just built these features over 40 years and it's really hard. So, like, I like to say that we want to be better than every tool at everything except Tableau. We want to be almost as good at them as visualization, which is, like, I don't know. It's kind of sad, but it's just, like, it's hard.
And just to clarify, and I think I can probably go back over a decade where I think Mo's sister and I had a shared presentation. Just to clarify, I think the visualizations that I produce are beautiful, but the big point making when teaching analysts who say, well, I just need to make it pretty, there is a tendency to say, I'll do this crap like dropping shadow or adding more color or doing all the stuff that's additive and terrible. So I say it's not about being pretty, it's about being understood. Now, the fact is, if you nail the being understood, puts a lower cognitive load. People think that it looks good, but they don't start off by trying to make it. So I just want to clarify, when you said you came down on the side of Mo, there are many analysts who listen to this who I have worked with who are like, Tim is a fucking stickler about making the stuff look effective. So, I mean,
I tried to like full ban pie charts and word clouds at Looker for a while, like fully resist them.
Right.
Yep.
And like, I still really don't think that you should use them, but, like, we built both immediately at Omni because, like, what I realized is just, like, you need to pick your battles with your users. And if the person wants to build a word cloud, like, I can't convince them every time that it's not a good visualization. I just need to be like, here's your word cloud. Like, good luck.
You should have the requirement that says if you put more than, like, 4 categories in your pie chart, it pops up an alert, like buried in the ggplot documentation.
Don't do this.
To do a pie chart in ggplot, you have to use this, like, change the coordinate system to pull. And it's in the help documentation that it basically says, this is generally a bad idea. Like, we get that you were probably trying to do something that's a bad idea. So that would be a killer feature for a BI platform.
You just pop up a new form of Clippy. It looks like you're trying to commit a chart crime. You want some help with that? Okay, so I think we've nailed the solution here, which is...
We haven't even talked about APIs. I mean, there is so much more. Anyway.
No, we're over time, Mo. Persona-based quizzes when people onboard to the new tool to determine what features they get. It's like, oh, you can't answer these questions? Okay, you get the static charts. Oh, you know a little bit about this? You get some notebooks.
I don't hate it, actually. Like, the philosophy of that is correct, I think.
Yeah, because then you can say, like, hey, answer these questions, and then we'll get you into the right part of the tool.
With the persistent avenue, when they butt up against the limit and they have a need and they've gotten to that point, there's an avenue for them to say, can you move me to the next level? I think that I like it.
Yeah.
It's a killer feature right there.
And you get a gold star for the day. Okay, but we have to start to wrap up. Obviously, Colin, thank you for managing to get a word in edgewise around all of us, because like Mo has strong opinions loosely held, Tim has strong opinions strongly held. So great conversation and really illuminating. Really appreciate your perspective. One thing we love to do, go around the horn, share a last call, something we might find of interest. So you're our guest, Colin. Do you have a last call you'd like to share?
I have two quickies. One, perfect. I'm sort of embarrassed to say this. The games on LinkedIn are pretty fun. They're like 30 seconds, and you should play them every day.
What?
So
I went for 3 or 4 days. I went down that. I said, I need to step away. I've already got.
You can see your leaderboard against like other people. It's a lot of fun.
I go on LinkedIn like once every 6 months. Like I don't want to. I don't want to open the trap.
This was their viral hook. Anyway, their games are fun. The second one, and this is like my little trick. Turn off images by default in your email. And the reason you do it is because it blocks all the pixel tracking, and you can decide whether you want to turn images on, which is effectively alerting people that you've opened their email. But otherwise, it by default blocks all the pixel tracking. And so no one can actually track whether you've opened their emails or not.
So when you have a client of those 300 clients who has their email dashboard and some jackass is looking at click to open rate, and the poor analyst has been saying, I've been trying there are a million reasons that pixel is the most imperfect thing anyway, and it is treated as sacred. So that is you just tried to make, it's a horrible metric to be looking at anyway. So I like the, mess with them a bit more. So I endorse that.
All right. Mo, what about you? What's your last call?
Okay, guys, you know how I go through this phase and I like get really into something and then I like read everything on that topic and like I've reached a new one. This is like similar to the Why We Sleep book, where I'm going to be talking about this for the next like 18 months. So prepare yourself, friends. I finished Careless People, a story of where I used to work. And the author is Sarah Wynne Williams, about her time. It was called Facebook when she joined. Holy shit, man. Like I actually wasn't going to read it because I was like, I don't want to read like a worky thing. I need a bit of space. And someone's like, oh, I actually think you should read it. It might be good for you. And I've discussed the book genuinely with so many people, but it's kind of just like reaffirmed for me how much my own values are important to me in my job. And like, I don't know. It's got me thinking a lot about like the kind of places I want to work and the kind of people I want to work with. And also like, she just dropped some great tea. What's a good time.
What's it called?
Careless People.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So she worked at Facebook very, very early on with Zuck and Sheryl Sandberg. And like, there are some great anecdotes in there. I actually that there's apparently a word for it. The morning you get when you like finish a really good book. I had that for like days. I was so upset. But I was straight on to the next one. And so the summary is I'm deep in my reading books that there's lots of tea about tech companies. So I'll show the next one on the next episode.
Nice. All right, Tim, what about you?
Well, I'm going to go with the book as well. And this is not a book. I have not finished reading it, but I've enjoyed it so far. It's pretty random. It's called Once Upon a Prime, The Wondrous Connections Between Mathematics and Literature. So it's a mathematician, and you're like, a whole book? It goes down Tristram Shandy, A Gentleman in Moscow, Metamorphosis, and it's got all of these. Some of them are like experimental literature. She talks about easy things like haikus, and there are other versions of haikus, but it is this deep exploration by somebody who loves reading and is a professional mathematician. And it's not particularly useful for anything other than she feels like the math and the arts have gotten too far apart, and she's trying to bring them together. But it's just got the whole concept of experimental literature that is like math based. And she's got multiple examples of that. So it's just kind of a odd but interesting read. What about you, Michael? What's your last call?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So MIT recently did a study of the cognitive debt when using AI assistance for essay writing.
Oh, dear. Have you read Cassie's teardown of this thing?
No, I haven't. So I'll read that next. But I did read the study, and it's not everything that the media folks are making it out to be like. If you use AI, you're going to get dumber. But there are some interesting conclusions that they come to. And it's, I think, worth a look at what they're saying. Because I think it goes even to something, Colin, you said earlier, which is sort of like if you just accept the response that the tool, that the data gives you, that it's not right. The same with an AI. If you just accept the response without critically analyzing what's going on, or that person in the middle, you run the risk of maybe giving up just a little bit of your intellectual critical abilities, and Lord knows we need those. So just be careful out there.
I'm just saying, Michael, it is 90% drafted. I referenced that study in a post that will have long been out by the time
we'll add that to the show notes then. Perfect. All right. Well, I'm sure as you've been listening, you've been having your own thoughts about this topic, and we would love to hear them. Feel free to reach out to us. There's some great ways to do that. Obviously, you can get to us on LinkedIn or on the Measure Slack chat group or via email at contact@analyticshour.io. So please reach out. Colin, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate you taking the time to do that and share some of your insight. And as you go through this and you're listening, and if you like what you're hearing on the show, please feel free to drop a rating, a review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. That helps us out quite a bit. See, I'm still not ready for this. Like, I still want to thank Josh, but, you know.
You can still, he did a lot. You can thank him again.
Hey, thanks, Josh, for everything you have done in the past. So anyways, but I know that no matter what BI tool you use, I think I can speak for both of my co-hosts, Mo and Tim, when I say, keep analyzing.
Let's keep the conversation going with your comments, suggestions, and questions on Twitter at @AnalyticsHour, on the web at analyticshour.io, our LinkedIn group, and the Measure Chat Slack group. Music for the podcast by Josh Crowhurst.
So smart guys wanted to fit in, so they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
Do the analytics say go for it no matter who's going for it? So if you and I were on the field, the analytics say go for it. It's the stupidest, laziest, lamest thing I've ever heard for reasoning in competition.
I think they might be going direct to video at this point or something, but yeah, I thought that was a very bold analogy, and I was there for it, you know.
You got
one night a year, you get to kill any dashboard you want. It's like,
okay, you're a data scientist. We don't have one of those. Like, go make us some money. And I feel like
find us the insights.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what is being sold to execs, that we're going to be able to do this in months.
I mean, we do a little bit of it too. Don't worry.
There are also garbage charlatans who are AI hype monkeys.
Totally. But that's always the case, right? For some.
All right, I'm going to mute Tim and Mo for just a second, Colin. Just you and me. No, I'm just kidding.
I feel like I'm a bit of an asshole. I'm like, this could go wrong.
You're a
poking
snowflake.
holes and
obviously, Colin, thank you for managing to get a word in edgewise around all of us. Because like Mo has strong opinions loosely held. Tim has strong opinions strongly held.
So when you have a client, of those 300 clients who has their email dashboard, and some jackass is looking at click to open rate, and the poor analyst has been saying, I've been trying, there are a million reasons that, I mean, that pixel is the most imperfect thing anyway, and it is treated as sacred. So that is, you just tried to make, I mean, it's a horrible metric to be looking at anyway. So I like the, mess with them a bit more. So I endorse that. Rock Flag and the Purge, Part 6, BI tools.